you, Mr. Chairman, very much. And members of the committee, as perhaps others have said, I feel a sense of gratitude and loss as I come into this room for the first time without Congresswoman Louise Slaughter of New York being here. I can feel her presence and sense her, and we thank her and her family and her constituents for sending her to this Congress for so many years of honorable service.
We agree with that, and just looking up at her picture, watching over us, and thinking of rhubarb pie makes us all feel better.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member McGovern, and members of this distinguished committee. The bill that we are considering here today addresses the need to deal with nuclear waste, which is scattered at dozens of nuclear sites across our country. And increasingly, these sites will no longer have active nuclear power plants, or at least a large subset of them. And all that remains locally is a shuttered plant and radioactive waste. I'm here today to defend an equally significant dimension of nuclear power capabilities, and that is the human and community casualties that result from the closure of these plants. And I beg your attention, as the Rules Committee, to a more reasonable adjustment glide path for impacted communities and people who live and work there. Let me mention that for the Great Lakes region, we have no energy umbrella like the Bureau of Reclamation in the West or the Tennessee Valley Authority in portions of the South. The impact on local economies due to the potential loss of nuclear-related jobs and the tax base when nuclear power plants close can indeed be severe. For example, in my district, a plant called Davis-Besse, a 900-megawatt plant that produces nuclear power, will, if it were to close, would mean the loss of a direct 700 highly paid, skilled nuclear industry workers, and for every 100 nuclear power plant jobs, 66 related jobs created in the local community. That's an additional 500 jobs. These plants are among the largest taxpayers in their communities, typically contributing tens of millions of dollars in local taxes. So for years, in fact, each year, the Davis-Besse plant in my district in a rural county generates $20 million in tax revenue for Ottawa County, of which $12.1 million goes to its school district. Let me be clear. We do not wish to give up on Davis-Besse, nor should we easily give up on other nuclear power plants around our country. Nuclear power provides the largest majority of clean energy in this country. And from a national security perspective, we must consider the impact of the anticipated closure on our nation's nuclear supply chain, which absolutely includes its highly trained people and specialized technologies. Our amendment proposes to offer community adjustment support to soften the blow of the significant revenue losses that will harm the immediate community and its workers by infusing federal payments on a gliding path over 8 years to eligible local governments should the worst happen. The funding would provide 80% of the lost revenues during the first year, decreasing by 10% per year for the remaining years of eligibility. The other massive burden on local communities results from spent nuclear fuel that will remain on site. Unfortunately, nuclear waste on these sites is stranded around our country due to what's been talked about here earlier today. We don't have a permanent disposal site. So due to this federal failure, these local communities cannot clean up the impacted sites and transform them into some other useful purpose. Indeed, in the case of Davis-Besse, it's on a beautiful site along Lake Erie's freshwater south coast in close proximity to several thousand acres of state and federal parks and reserves, destinations which at this moment are overrun by tourists every year. It is simply one of the best birding, boating, and fishing locations in the world and a primary migratory path for North American songbirds. The site could easily be converted to increase lodging and recreation, and instead the local community and government will be stuck overseeing major deposits of nuclear waste, no tax revenue, and struggling schools. Ohioans don't give up. It is our history, and during the Battle of Lake Erie, Commander Oliver Hazard Perry, and I know, Mr. Chairman, you're in the Air Force, but in any case, he memorialized at Perry's Monument, just a few miles from Davis-Besse, and unfurled a flag that read, "Don't give up the ship." Well, we're not giving up, and we plan to keep fighting for the community and those impacted by the future of Davis-Besse. In closing, If the worst happens, I urge my colleagues to consider my amendment or some amended version of it for communities such as this to consider the toll that these closures will exert on communities, schools, roads, law enforcement, and other fundamental civil services that people need will be gutted. This is not an isolated problem facing the people of Northern Ohio. Dozens of other communities are facing the prospect of closures of plants across this nation. The closure of these plants affects more than the plant itself. We owe our people our best effort to provide a pathway for recovery should the worst happen. Thank you so much.
Thank the gentlelady. Appreciate it. And also just a reminder to all witnesses